Hi, so this is Bowlby's theory of attachment. I'm going to focus especially on kind of the evolutionary basis of it. So there's two ways this will come up in the exam. One, either asking you to just describe and evaluate Bowlby's theories of attachment, or asking you to talk about the evolutionary basis. And remember, Bowlby is kind of the root of most of the work that we do on child. It comes into daycare, it's important for privation and deprivation, and so on. So remember, an attachment, any of these definitions are fine. I'll just use Bowlby's at the second. A strong affectional tie that binds a person to an intimate companion. Remember, an attachment is a two-way link between parent and child. So the first thing you have to remember or realise is that babies are born completely helpless. They have no way of caring for themselves. They have no way of knowing when they're in danger, and so they need other people. They need people to take care of them. And they are designed in such a way, and we have evolved in such a way to make this happen. Parents have a bond with their child. Parents love their child and want to look after them. If they didn't, then they would leave their child and the child would die. So it's very important for our species, or for all species, that there's some sort of attachment or bond. And this works in keeping the child alive. And it always has. So much so that it's now an innate part of us. So signs that people are attached: seek proximity, they have distress on separation, they have joy on reunion, and a general orientation towards one another. You should see this when we talk about things like secure base and with Ainsworth's work later on in the syllabus. So before we talk about people, since we're talking about evolution, we have to look at animals. Remember, we call this ethology. So there's a couple of different examples of ethology. Remember, we're not alone in loving our animal and loving our children. All species do it, and they do it because, again, it increases our chance of survival. If you care for a baby, if you look after it, keep it warm, keep it safe, protect it from predators, things like that, then it will live longer and pass the genes on. Remember, that's all evolution wants us to do. Evolution wants us to pass the genes on to the next generation. So by keeping our children safe, keeping them alive, we allow that to happen. So the ethologists, like Konrad Lorenz, were the ones who looked at animals and how they do this. So remember, Konrad Lorenz, what he did was he got lots of different geese. Some he made sure he was the first thing they saw. Some he made sure that the mother goose was the first thing they saw. And what happened was the geese imprinted on either him or the mother goose. What he found was that this has to happen within a 32-hour period. This is a critical period. Otherwise, it would never happen. And those geese, the ones who don't imprint, don't follow their mother, don't get fed, don't learn how to survive, and so will die off. So it's an important evolutionary process that occurs. The same is true of Harlow and the monkeys. Remember, so since both Harlow and Lorenz's shows that we've got this innate biological process, we can attest to it being evolved. But again, there are problems with linking that to humans. Harlow's monkeys also saw a lot of other similarities, such as they use their mother as a secure base from which to explore the world. And those who don't have that sort of attachment are kind of socially, emotionally, behaviourally damaged. So these are some of the human characteristics that we show and how that behaviour has evolved. I'll just give you a quick minute. You can pause this and have a read of these. But again, we have evolved our attachment because it keeps us alive and keeps us propagating the species. So John Bowlby was a very important person in the field of attachment. His maternal deprivation hypothesis led on to his theory of attachment in general. So he saw humans being just like animals. We have to have an innate tendency to form attachments with a caregiver. That's because it gives us an adaptive advantage. Remember, adaptive just means useful. The fact that we form an attachment is useful for us. We keep our children alive, and it helps carry on the species, which is why both baby and parent have these evolved kind of behaviours that will help that occur. So Bowlby's theory can be summarised in 5 letters. We've got the fact that it's adaptive and innate. So Again, this is the idea that it gives our species, attachment, gives our species an advantage. It makes us more likely to survive. Parents who love their children and children who love their parents are more likely to be kept safe, to be given food, to be kept warm, to be protected from predators, things like that. To help this along, babies have what we call social releases. Social releases are an inbuilt ability or an inbuilt skill there to make a parent love a child. So there are various physical ones like the facial features, big eyes, small faces, large heads, neonatal features, things like that. They also have behavioural abilities like crying, cooing, making eye contact, grasping behaviour. All of these behaviours that mean that the baby stays close to the parent. Remember, the entire point of social releases is to keep proximity, to make sure the parents never go too far away from the child. They cry when the mum and dad leaves them. When they're with them, they make her feel loved and happy so that she stays close. They grip onto her, things like that. All of these mean that she will be there to take care of them, to feed them and to respond when they are upset or when they need help. This is why we find other baby animals cute, by the way, because they show the similar sort of neonatal features. Larger heads than their bodies, or larger heads than the adult versions of them, large eyes in relation to that, smaller noses and mouths, stuff like that. They are all kind of an evolutionary advantage that makes parents love them. The critical period, remember, is the time between 2.5 years old, up to 2.5 years old, where children have to form a bond. Nowadays, we generally refer to it as the sensitive period. We now know that it's not 100% critical, it's more of a sensitive period. This is when attachment happens best. So you can't talk about the sensitive period in the exam instead of the critical period. So children who don't form this bond with a caregiver at this time will be socially, emotionally, intellectually and physically damaged. This ties very closely, obviously, to the maternal deprivation hypothesis. This was the first part of Bowlby's kind of big theories. Monotony is the fact that this has to be one caregiver. So this one caregiver is the person that the bond is strongest with, the person you know will look after you, the person the child feels safest with, and the person the child will always go to for that kind of comfort and support. And again, that ties it back to that evolutionary links. It also ties it to the concept of secure base. That was on, obviously, the evolved behaviour in children, and it is one of the things. Kids will use their parents as a secure base from which it's a safe place to explore. And finally, we've got the internal working model. So remember, we've got our first relationship, our monotropic bond, forms the schema for what all other relationships will be like. It tells us what we should expect in all of our future relationships with our parents. Not with our parents, with everyone. So your future romantic relationships are based upon your relationships with your parent. Remember, this is a very psychodynamic idea. It's very linked to Freud, and it's got some support in the likes of Hazan and Shaver, which is the one with the love quiz that we did in class. So the first attachment's the most important, and your relationship in future will be based on how you interacted with your parents at this early stage. This links to the continuity hypothesis, and also we've got that idea we've just mentioned of the secure base. All of this goes together to form Bowlby's theory of attachment, but we can also link it back as long as we talk about how it's an evolved process, and we talk about evolution, how, again, random changes occur, and if that change causes better survival, like the giraffe's long neck to reach leaves, like attachment causes children to survive better, it will be passed on to the next generation and move throughout the species. This is why we love our children. Right, thank you very much, and bye.